Welcome to your Watchtower Deprogrammer. My name is George Doggett. I've been deprogramming Jehovah's Witness cult since September 1990. In the last video, we demonstrated the technique whereby we could help Jehovah's Witnesses to have a restoration to free and independent thinking. And we demonstrated a process using 4 points. Number one, we have to get an understanding from the Jehovah's Witness on the meaning of new light, and we have to get an ironclad commitment from him that the new light is reliable and trustworthy. And to reinforce that, we agreed that we would use the witness's words, take a black magic marker and a yellow pad, and write what he says down on that pad. Next, we used a simple example of new light. And this new light focused on the needless murder of faithful Jehovah's Witnesses when they were not allowed to have a smallpox vaccination. And we used a medical site in order to give some shock value to the witness, to show him a picture of a child with smallpox and to let him read for himself the symptoms of what it's like to die a hideous death of smallpox. Finally, we confronted the Jehovah's Witness with the question regarding how in the world could the Watchtower take vaccinations and then, in a split instant, have new light that prohibited smallpox vaccinations, and to tell their believing public that vaccinations were created by or invented by Satan the devil himself, and that no dedicated Jehovah's Witness would ever take one, only to be overturned completely by another new light that went back to the original teaching that says smallpox vaccinations were acceptable. So today, rather than go on to another deprogramming technique, let's just settle on this for just a moment, because there's some background information that you might find interesting. Now, first of all, guys, I'm really sorry about that pathetic magic trick in that last video where I made my insulin disappear. And you'll be glad to know that I am giving up new light parlor room tricks. Good thing. Because I know I'll never be as good at that as the Watchtower governing body is. I mean, the Watchtower governing body can do new light tricks that will absolutely amaze and befuddle Jehovah's Witnesses. They can make a teaching disappear before millions of people. And what's even more amazing than that is they can magically make an old disappeared teaching reappear under new light. They can conjure up new light, and this wonderful novelty will amaze and mystify Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide. Now, as we said, Jehovah's Witnesses had new light on the new light. They went back to their original teaching. And today you will not get disfellowshipped for having a smallpox vaccination. And in a previous video, it was said that new light is capricious, it's arbitrary, it's unpredictable, it comes and goes. You never know when you're going to get it, and you never know when you're going to lose it. It's unreliable, and it's not trustworthy. And it was also said that new light was political. You were probably wondering, well, what world does that mean, new light political? Well, here's the answer. The governing body caucuses and discusses an event or a teaching among themselves, and they vote. And however it is that the governors vote becomes the binding rule for 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, the Watchtower governing body is the only segment of the Watchtower publication or Watchtower organization where dissent is allowed. One governing body member can dissent and vote against the other governing body member, and they don't have to be in unified agreement. However, they do have to have at least a certain amount of agreement. They've got to come to a 66 2/3 agreement in order for new light to be ratified and to be binding upon the congregations. And then the remaining Watchtower governing body members will try to parlay or caucus the no votes to try to persuade them to become yes votes and therefore have a 100% unified doctrine. Now, that does not always work in practice. And the politics involves who's on the governing body, when they're on the governing body, the logic of the argument, the repercussions of a new teaching on the Watchtower organization. But this procedure has not always been followed. So let me give you an example relating back to the vaccination issue. Let me give you a little bit of history. Nathan Knorr became the fourth president of the Watchtower Society, and it was his mission to grow the organization into a worldwide organization. Accordingly, he began a great educational work among Jehovah's Witnesses, and to tell you the truth, I was one of the people that benefited from that educational work because he started the Theocratic Ministry School. He removed the primitive testimony cards where Jehovah's Witnesses would simply go to the door with an index card and have the householder read. And he also dispensed with the phonographs where a record was played at the door and books were placed. And he also dispensed with the sound cars that blared outside of churches that religion was a snare and a racket. The Theocratic Ministry School was initiated, and a training center for Watchtower foreign missionaries was established. You see, the Watchtower was now about to get heavily involved in the worldwide work. And with this background, I need for you to understand that they weren't taking smallpox vaccinations. And as a consequence of this, they suffered greatly, a great deal more than what they should have. You see, they were already put in prison for not going into the military. Now, back in those days, New Light said that you could not say to a judge, I want you to have me go into hospital service. That was not permitted. I want to go into hospital service in lieu of going into the military. You weren't allowed to do that. However, however it is that the Watchtower does this, they said that if the judge now sentenced you and it was a punishment to go into the hospital and work, then that was fine. Now, to follow any other procedure than this was obviously to the Watchtower governing body a compromise with the world, and Jehovah's Witnesses would be faithful to Jehovah's organization under all circumstances and at all cost. So folks, thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses, young men, were arrested. And as you know, barracks and jails are festering places for diseases and sicknesses. And Jehovah's Witnesses, when they entered the penitentiary system, were ordered to take a smallpox vaccination. That was part of the protocol to protect the prisoners. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't do it. They were not going to compromise with the world and use something that was invented by Satan the devil himself. So as a result of their non-compliance, the courts added additional time, and so the witness got one sentence for failing to enter into the military, and a second sentence for failing to protect those in the penitentiary by having a precautionary vaccination. Well, how in the world, from this sad state of affairs, did these unfortunate and blind but sincere young boys behind jail bars start to take smallpox vaccinations? You want to know how that happened? I'll tell you. It was revealed in the book written by A.H. Macmillan, one of the anointed, heavenly called people, one of the early people that served with the Watchtower. He was called Brother Mac. He was especially loved by Brother Russell, and Brother Russell even wanted Brother Mac to consider taking over the presidency when Russell himself died. Well, Brother Mac wanted to go out and see the brothers in the prison and to talk to them and to encourage them. And so he would enter into the military prison and he would talk to the boys. And the boys would tell them that their faith in Jehovah and his organization were as strong as ever, that they were serving their time, they were being faithful, and they were not allowing the smallpox vaccination. Well, this is really interesting. Brother Mac went out and kind of surrounded the young brother by around his arm and shoulders and says, now boys, when we send missionaries out to preach the good news, the receiving countries ask us to have vaccinations. And all of our missionaries agree to a vaccination so that we can have advancement of the kingdom. Suddenly, an evil that was sponsored by Satan the devil himself now became something that Jehovah's Witnesses could participate in. It was now sanctioned. But as a result, my friends, thousands perhaps of Jehovah's Witnesses got sick, some died, some had their prison terms extended, and even though they now agreed to the smallpox vaccination, their sentence was kept in place as long as this teaching was enforced. So do you understand why I would say to you that New Light is political? It depends on the time and the season. New Light is unpredictable. It always has been, even since July 1879, with the printing of the very first Watchtower. This is your Watchtower deprogrammer, George Doggett. Please tune in next time.